Welcome, welcome, everyone. I see our participants funneling in. Jeana, I am so excited for today's conversation for a couple of reasons. One, the 1 hour general elective that we teach this year is called Sticky Situations. But I think people are still kind of wrapping their head around exactly what we mean when we say sticky situations. And so I really want to break that down just quickly for people. These are situations that we've seen or had people reach out to us about from LOs, from processors, from people within the mortgage sphere. And they're running into these situations where they're just a little bit confused. Maybe they just need a little clarity on them. Maybe they already went through it and they're like, well, whoops, didn't know that that's what I was going to do. Didn't know that that's how it would be handled. Didn't know that the regulator was going to come across it. And now I found myself in this sticky situation. So I do want to jump in on a very kind of heavy topic that is on both of our minds so much right now. Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about
Ah,
AI in the mortgage sphere because again, this is something it's not just revolutionizing the way that we do business, it's revolutionizing the way that we conduct our daily lives. So there's a lot here that I feel like we can unpack. I want to know, especially from your perspective, because we're seeing AI show up all throughout the mortgage process. It is literally everywhere. It's now in marketing copy, it's in our pre-qual conversations. What are you seeing right now that you feel like is emerging where maybe there just aren't the guardrails in place? It feels like even though we knew this was coming, we're all kind of being slapped upside the head right now with it and going, oh, whoa, whoa, wait a second. We didn't put everything in place that we needed to put in place to be prepared for this. So, what are you seeing? Let's talk about it.
yeah. So the sticky situations idea is it's your day to day, right? We're in this day to day, and something that is part of our mainstream daily activities goes sideways, and now we're in big trouble, right? Something has gone awry. AI, to your point, LaDonna, it's one of the number one topics right now. And so what is happening is this thing is compounding faster than any of us could have anticipated. We knew it was coming, and we have two camps right now. We have the camps that are fully integrating and they're leveraging it and they're using it and they're going all in. And then we have the other camps that are resisting and going, absolutely not. I'm afraid of it. I'm terrified. It's going to take over the world and I want no part of this. There is a happy medium. And this is where we have a lack of training in the industry, right? We're telling people, hey, get faster, get better. The product mix is getting broader and they don't know what to do with it. So when we go to the operation side of mortgage, we see people that are trying to speed up turn times. They're trying to calculate income. They're trying to do all of the things that we've done historically in this business manually. And now they're integrating that into AI, especially when it comes to some of these bank statement calculations for income, when it comes to some of, the DSCR ratio calculations and things like that. They're using AI for those components. The first risk in that is ensuring that it's accurate, right? The primary risk, though, is that the client's data has to remain protected. So, a lot of our courses, we've talked about this when we go into the 1 hour elective, and the look on everybody's face when I say, are you redacting all of the client's personal information? It is, I think it's the biggest shock moment of the class. Everybody's going, wait a minute, what?
Kind of
Nobody
looking at their
told us.
neighbor like,
Nobody, yeah,
are you doing
nobody,
that?
yeah. Like everybody's like, what? You see them look around and you see the whispers, right? They start talking. They're like, how are you doing this? So we just opened the floor. I said, look, I know that most of you aren't doing this. I know that most of you haven't been trained to do this. So let's talk about it. So we talk about some tools that are out there. We're not sponsored or anything by redactable.com, but the redactables out there. There's a lot of different software and a lot of different tools, your PDF editor, things like that. Snipping tools, sometimes just snipping, depending on which AI component you're using, you can snip the important data, have it calculate what you need to calculate or input that data without exposing all of the client's information.
This really is such an important thing for people to be thinking about because, again, it's one of those areas where I feel like early adopters jumped right in and they were just uploading everything and saying, here's my client situation, run the scenario, and let me know what program you feel like is the best fit for it. And that is so dangerous. So many of these are open. Your
Mhm.
information is out there. It can be searched, it can be disclosed, it can be hacked, all of it. So, this is a very real compliance issue. But then, on top of it, let's talk about who's on the hook? Who's on the hook? What if
Yeah.
you use AI to generate inaccurate disclosures? What if you create misleading product comparisons or there's a fair lending violation? Because again, we know that there is bias that exists within a lot of these models. So, what happens then? Who's on the hook for these things?
That's a great question, LaDonna. And it's one thing to break out into different segments. And here's why. The first segment of this is you have the camps that are full adopters. These companies are out there right now saying, hey, we're tech companies. We just happen to do mortgage. They're leading and they're the pioneers in the AI component. They obviously have a little bit more risk, but they also have a lot more depth when it comes to technology. And so that's how they're bridging is they've got developers, they've got these teams, and they really do function like a tech company that just so happens to facilitate mortgage. There's a lot of those out there. I won't name names, but we're seeing them emerge, and they're all over the headlines. Read NMP. You'll see which companies I'm talking about. But then there's the others, right? Where we're seeing one of the largest lenders across the country right now really not adopting any of that. And the main reason is because if one of these disclosures, imagine an ARM disclosure goes out, accuracy is the component, right? So depending on that accuracy is going to depend on the risk. And so some of these companies that are functioning like tech companies that are doing mortgage, they have massive resources to look at those things, review those things constantly. The other companies that have been functioning in the mortgage space and are now integrating into technology, they have a gap there. There's a deficit in resources in to ensure the accuracy. And that's where they really risk some liability. So you as a broker, if you're a small broker shop and you're leveraging AI on your own, maybe you're using Claude for one component, Nano Banana for another. You might be using ChatGPT or Gemini. You have so many options right now. Ensuring accuracy becomes nearly impossible. You have to do your research. And so you can't go in and ensure accuracy. Heck, I was taking a quiz yesterday and was testing some AI and Claude failed. They failed. Oh my
It
goodness.
happens.
I was like, wait a minute. I thought this thing was error proof. But no, they really do. They have a component of error. They are not 100% accurate. And in fact, our friends at NMP wrote an article on how they tested the accuracy of two different AIs, and one was substantially better than the other. They will catch up to each other. Accuracy will continue to improve the more data that gets fed in and the more time that compounds. But ultimately, as a broker, if you quote something wrong, if you put something out there inappropriately, or as a direct lender, you're on the hook for that. And depending on the size of your business, depends on the liability. We see a company like UWM that right now is facing a lawsuit over somebody pulling credit. That person said,
Mhm.
hey, I didn't give authorization to pull my credit. Imagine the broker owner if somebody finds out that your team has uploaded all of their personal data and their entire mortgage loan file. Broker's on the
Mhm.
hook. Ultimately, the person executing that is on the hook. Now, we do see these larger companies, the big banks, and some of these large retail lenders that have big attorney teams, and they may be launching some of their own proprietary systems. This means a
Sure.
system that is devoted just to them. It's within their internal controls, and yet they're having to get tech up to speed. So we saw some of these larger banks, they were all at a convention. They spent, $5 billion to create, or $3 billion to create their own proprietary system. By the time it launched, it was outdated. So there really are some challenges with this. The smaller you are, the more diligent you have to be. Not that eyes are going to be on you particularly, but you do have to do your diligence and train your team and make sure that if ever anything goes into question, you have pieces documented, that you did train to redact, that you uploaded only the income data and not the client's personal identifying data.
One of my favorite stories that you share is one where you were assisting a company as they were implementing a new AI into their system and had kind of a chat bot that was keeping tabs on everyone and learning about the company. And it developed bias. And I
Absolutely.
love this story so much. If you don't mind just sharing kind of the quick version of it, I think it's so important to share so that people understand exactly what we mean when we say the info that it gets fed really can and does create bias. So please share the story.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So we have this false sense that it has an unbiased or that it's just going to give us factual data. It doesn't. It picks up on our personality and it picks up on what's going on. So in our particular situation, we were creating this bot. His name was Ryan, and Ryan was watching the team. He was watching the chat threads, and he was watching the behavior and patterns and the dialogue about each of the loan officers and the team as a whole. And what was fascinating was it was time to get out our weekly report. We went to send out the weekly report, and Ryan had wrote a report on what everybody was doing that week, particularly one loan officer that was not performing favorably. And so Ryan literally was like, loan officer such and such, good luck finding him this week. He's probably going to be pulling his magic act of disappearing. And, it just went on and on. And he went on to state how, potentially he might pull a loan out of his hat this week and actually produce something. And it was just horrifying. And the ops manager just sent it out to the whole group. And, so this whole division gets this, 100 plus people are getting this email, and this one loan officer is just AI really, really did not like, our Ryan guy did not like his performance. So we had to we created Robbie, and Robbie, we had to make sure that he had no bias, no personal opinions, and could only report strictly factual. And so that's something too, when you're putting your prompts in, make sure that it's strictly factual, make sure that you unbias your prompt, and what you put into that is going to directly correlate to what your response is. I don't know if you guys saw this. Ryan Serhat just did a reel, and he did a reel on how ChatGPT lost him a $50 million deal. And the reason was the seller went in there and asked Chat, how much do you think my property's worth? And what do you think I could sell it for? And what's the best strategy? Chat gave the seller a strategy, and that seller didn't think they were getting a good deal anymore and wanted to pull out. Ironically, the buyer did the same thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
buyer was told that they were overpaying and that this wasn't a great deal. And so chat is literally telling each person exactly what they wanted to hear or what the best deal for them was. And Ryan said now he was left mitigating this whole mess and trying to tell people, or trying to solve that issue and salvage that deal. It's a reel right now that's going all over the place. Look it up. It's kind of funny, and he does a good job with it.
That's exactly what I feel like so many people are running into, and where I think going forward within the LO space, it is going to be so critical to differentiate yourself, to establish yourself as an expert, because this technology is advancing so quickly. It is a matter of time. It's a short matter of time before it is better than all of us. So right now, really taking that time, and I don't say this to be a
LaDonna, it's already better
doomsdayist.
than us. It's already better
That's
than us.
exactly, I'm like, it is, we are literally days and days away from it being the smartest entity that we could possibly imagine. So that can feel really grim for anyone who is just coming about this, wanting to do their business, wanting to just succeed, knowing that we have this massive hurdle that we're all going to have to figure out how to adopt, how to work with. We know that it's here, and it really lends to diversification right now is as important as it's ever been. And that includes diversifying what technology you are familiarizing yourself with and becoming an expert in. So that's kind of to the extent that I want to cover that, just because, again, I feel like we could talk AI all day on every
We
webinar.
need a whole nother webinar just on AI because it has so much going on right now. I think
It
everybody has a
does.
webinar on AI at the moment.
It does, because it is that revolutionary force and it is changing everything. And we do need to talk about it. But I love your points of, the guardrails may not necessarily exist. And that's where we need to come into the picture and actually implement those things so that we are protecting our consumers, so that we're looking out for privacy, and so that our cybersecurity is literally the strongest that it can be, because these things are getting so good and so tricky that hacking systems is going to become infinitely easier. So I want to kind of leave it at that. Let's talk about just the mortgage industry in general right now. We know that the landscape looks so differently than it did even a year ago. We've had a huge shift in rates. We've seen borrower profiles changing. We know that non-QM products have exploded. Now we're kind of seeing these choppy points in the market. I actually just returned from a private equity um, and law convention literally last night. And I'm seeing this kind of want in people in MLOs to diversify. And so I'm wondering from your side of things, what do you think is going to be so critical for people right now in that diversification space? Where should they be focusing? What should people be putting their time, energy, and efforts into right now?
Well, I think this is another big one, right? It's not a matter of what I think, it's a matter of what the data shows. And the data
Hmm.
shows that you're going to have to expand your knowledge base. You're going to have to go into some non-QM. DSCR is booming. Here's where the challenge comes in. Here's where the compliance pieces come in. You've got to know what you're doing. And
Hmm.
when we're talking about fair lending, when you have a client in front of you, gone are the days that you can just have your three lenders and who you like to work with, and you just send that loan to them and it's cookie cutter. You've got to get really creative and yet stay compliant. Make sure that the data you're sending in is accurate. And where we see some of the hair on these pieces are where occupancy gets way sideways.
Mm.
We'll see somebody that can't qualify traditionally for a mortgage, and all of a sudden they become a miraculous investor and they're going DSCR. The whole point of DSCR is that they're looking at, if they foreclose on that home, if they walk away from that home, can the investor recoup that in either a sale or in renting that property? You're qualifying that borrower on rents that they're anticipating to receive and on income they're going to generate from that property. And so you're not actually qualifying that borrower. So you've got to get really creative. There's bank statement options out there. The whole non-QM pool of products is robust. And there's literally an option for just about anybody in the marketplace right now. If you're not offering that, someone else will be. And if you're not offering that, and there's a history of you not offering that, eventually that could red flag. To tie
Mhm.
back to AI, the data, to see the data and see our trends and our patterns is going to be more prevalent than ever. It's easier. And so they can go, hey, LO, Jennifer is over here and she's only doing these loans and only submitting to these three investors. We see now where investors and brokers are getting looked into because they're sending all their loans, a higher percentage of their loans, to a certain investor. You have to diversify. That's the beauty of being in the broker space, and that's what's expected in the broker space, is that, hey, you're in broker to offer a robust amount of products, and you get some perks and benefits to that, most of the time in rate. All right, most of the time in some of the ability to send loans to different investors. There's all kinds of different perks to that, but it does come with responsibility. And that responsibility is, you have to have a broader depth of knowledge and you have to go deeper in knowledge, because to our point earlier, you now are not just leading the mortgage transaction, you are leading the entire narrative. And you're making sure that that client understands that you're the authority in that transaction. You're the person that's going to be guiding and leading them. And if they start leaning on ChatGPT, or they start leaning on their neighbor next door, or some influencer that
Mhm.
got some reels or social media platform that's talking about what's going on, or some debt guy or anything else that's out there, you lose credibility, and now you're just trying to hold your deal together. And if you look at the data, the deals that fell apart over the first quarter are significantly higher than ever before. And I think it's because people are getting a lot of information from a lot of outside sources. Also, there's a lot going on, but the main driver is the excessive amount of data and misinformation that's coming into people.
That makes so much sense. And I want to kind of tie that into my next question for you, which is, because we have these different people coming into spaces that maybe they haven't traditionally lent in before, maybe they're trying to find creative options for borrowers. Maybe the borrower just straight up misled them. But we know that occupancy fraud continues to be at the top of some of the stickiest situations. What is it about occupancy fraud that it just keeps coming up, that it is just such a persistent issue within the industry and within compliance right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely transparent. One is the industry has been beat up pretty rough over the past 3 years. So people are desperate. They want a paycheck. And I'll be honest, if LOs will sometimes dabble in the gray if they need to get paid. So that's the real fact, right? I mean, we can candy coat it, but the reality is sometimes people get desperate and so they make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise, and they get extremely creative, not in a good way. They get creative in compliance or fraud. So we don't want anybody getting into that. The other is, people are getting desperate as well, right? We see the rise
Mhm.
of home ownership prices going up. They're not coming down, they continue to rise. And so as that continues to happen, people are having to get more creative to get into a home. And so sometimes it could be desperation on the client side where the client is going, look, I heard about this product. Maybe they were at another lender, that loan fell through, and now they're at you and they have some words, they have some insights, and they're coming to that new lender telling them a story and that they're going to become a landlord. Well, we're already seeing some of the foreclosure rates on some of those DSCRs. We're already seeing that just because somebody can purchase a property, and this is general knowledge, just because you can purchase a property, just because you can get in and be a landlord, doesn't mean you're a good landlord. It takes time, it takes effort. You've got to rent and clean, and it's a whole process. Granted, as lenders, we don't have to know that that borrower has that ability because we're qualifying the property, not that person. But when you're looking at some of these components, you've got to do more questions. You've got to ask more questions. You've got to get a little more depth on that. And definitely, this is a two camps area as well. We have one where the lender is misled and truly believes that this client wants to get into investing. And we have the other where the lender is leading the client to believe that they're an investor now. And so both are impasses of just a lack of information, a lack of actually gaining depth. And if you see that this is a first time, if you have multiple DSCR, if this is a client that has an investment portfolio, your risk is a lot lower. However, if this is a first time component, or if you see their ratios are really low and now they're moving to DSCR, really ask what their intention is and make sure that you're leading that transaction and doing it accurately outside of fraud, making sure that if they say they're going to rent that property, they truly intend to rent that property. Or in some cases, we see people that are, saying it's a primary because they want the primary benefits of the loan and they have no intention of being a primary. So you've got to look at the client as the big picture, not just one lane. And I think the majority of LOs have been doing that for a long time, but there is that small percentage that is looking at one loan and making that decision, and then the rest of the industry pays for that.
I want to shift gears because I really want, as we're going forward with these compliance webinars, and we'll soon be shifting these to more of a once a month format, we really just wanted to get us out there and show people exactly what type of information they can expect from us. But we do want to make sure that we're doing more of these sticky situations going forward in the future. So I want to get people's brains kind of working around again what exactly we're looking for when we talk about this. So, an example that I can think of really recently that actually happened with us, we had a student who attended a live class last year who didn't sign in on the roster. And when you don't sign in on the roster, you don't agree to the rules of conduct. And as we all know, you have to agree to the NMLS rules of conduct in order to receive credit for a class. So, what did we do as the provider? Well, we tried like crazy to chase the student down. Basically, they did attend the whole class. We knew that they were there the whole time. I actually was there and I was like, I know they were in the class the whole time, but we can't give people credit without agreeing to those rules. So time goes on. We make 7 attempts to get a hold of the student. We call, I texted, we emailed, we called, we voicemailed, we did the things, right? Sure enough, the end of the year goes by and we can never give them credit. And we let them know that in one of the communications that we sent. And of course, after the first of the year, when they go to, you know, I think their compliance department actually reached out to them, if I remember correctly, but it was in February. So we're at the point where now 2 months past renewal. We're still within reinstatement period, but we're 2 months past the time of renewal. Student reaches out and says, hey, I just noticed that I didn't get credit for this class, so I didn't renew my license. And I said, yeah, you're right. Here's all the proof that I have of us trying like crazy to contact you. They were very apologetic and said, you're right. I missed this. I am so sorry. What do I do now? Well, here's where things get sticky. I then have to go to the NMLS as the provider and say, here's the situation. Here's what happened. What do we do? The NMLS came back to me and said, hold on. We don't know. We have to take it to the California DRE and they have to weigh in on this now. So we then have to wait for the DRE to come back with a response. Well, here's how it gets really sticky. We've now raised a red flag on this MLO that they have not been licensed for 2 months out of the year. And you know that they have been doing unlicensed activity now for 2 months out of the year. So now we're running into Safe Act violations, etc. So this is what I'm talking about when I say to people, we want your sticky situations. We want to know how you're going about what you're running into, situations that you've come across, just funky little compliance things. Let us help you with them. Let us help kind of bridge that gap for the other people within the industry so that we can make ourselves stronger and better and more informed. Because how many people in here really ever thought twice about those rules of conduct? You just kind of agree to them, you move on with your life. These are those little compliance pitfalls, those little compliance traps that really can get people in a whole lot of trouble down the line. So just to kind of spark those little light bulbs. But I would love to know, Jeana, do you have anything that kind of comes to mind? Any of these little examples that you've heard in class that you would want to share?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest right now is loan officers that are producing, they really do need some help. And so they go in and they'll get a loan partner. And where this gets sticky is if you look at the verbiage, right, it says you have to be licensed if you're doing licensed activity. Well, one of the components that's considered licensed activity is taking loan applications. Yet your loan partner can do clerical work. And so where this gets sticky is how much of the loan application is clerical work and how much is actually completing a loan application. And so as these people are getting in there, you have to determine at what point, and this is unique for each person, right? This is unique for each business model. How much is your loan partner doing? By the way, they shouldn't be doing your CE, just FYI. We see a lot of that too. That's a sticky situation.
We
It's where
do.
we literally get an email that says, my loan partner is trying to do my CE right now, and
Mhm.
they can't. You have to go into the NMLS and attest that you have done that CE. And that is one of these things where you're saying that you're the person actually completing that. So back to the loan partner role is they may actually go, okay, yes, they're doing licensed activity, so I'm going to get them licensed in Utah. And so they'll get their loan partner licensed in Utah. However, their business may be over several states and they don't have them licensed in the other states. And now their loan partner is fully taking application. They are quoting rate. They are finding product and pricing and walking that client through the entire process. And the LO is there and branded to that loan, but their loan partner is doing the lifting on it. And there's nothing wrong with having a loan partner. There's nothing wrong with having them take over some of those roles and responsibilities. In fact, it's quite advantageous as your business grows. However, the licensing component and the work that they're doing on a daily basis, that's where things get sticky. And if they're looked into, and to LaDonna's point, oftentimes this goes on without any red flags, no alerts, anything, it's business as usual. Once something clicks and there is an investigation or something opens up and they realize that that person was taking loan applications, that person was quoting rate, that person was structuring and aligning lenders with loans and clients, in that moment they start opening up Pandora's box and they start looking into everything. And you're liable for that window of time. You're liable for that window. And here's the interesting thing on this. Not only is the brokerage or the lender or the loan officer particularly liable, who actually receives the fine and is culpable for the financial disciplinary action is the loan partner. So the
Hmm.
person actually doing the work. So you may be liable holding the lender's position either in a broker or the larger lender or the branch manager, whichever position you're in. But that little loan partner that comes on just starting, getting excited about being in the industry is now liable for all of that. So they're holding the fines, they're holding that, and they could potentially lose their ability to ever work in the mortgage space again. That's one of the stickiest situations we're seeing right now. And people are so excited about having a loan partner, as they should be. But the licensing component gets overlooked, and the roles and responsibilities, let's be honest, the better that loan partner gets, the more responsibilities we give them. We're like, this is a good one. We're keeping them. We're taking care of them. And they start taking over, and you're so excited. But we just missed that step. That's where it gets really sticky. That's where when things get investigated, it goes haywire. And you could be in a world of a mess if that's the case. So just do your diligence. Make sure that if you're very clear with your loan partner what are their roles and responsibilities, and if their roles and responsibilities do start to infringe on licensed activity, you do need to get them licensed, not in one state, but in every state that you do business in.
I would love to kind of pick your brain on this to tie it back to AI. What do you think is going to happen with so many people integrating their AI avatars and AI bots into starting to help with the loan files and the loan processes? I've heard the argument of, well, wait a second, at what point do I need to get my AI avatar licensed? And that's another kind of guardrail area that I don't think people considered. I don't think that they thought about. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, interestingly, my first thought is on the disclosure component, right? At what point do we have to disclose how much AI is doing for us and how much it's, what it's not doing? I believe there is going to be an impasse of that where that's going to come on the table, and there's going to have to be some solid decisions around how much is disclosed and how much they can actually do. What we are seeing is some discussion around the tax liability. So this is very interesting. This taps into labor laws. And ironically, this is very interesting because it's not just the federal law that oversees this. We're seeing state labor laws come in, and they're starting to have a say on this. And they're going, hey, if we're going to lose all the tax benefits of employee taxes and all of these other things, we've got to make that up somewhere. And if AI or bots are displacing that, how do we recover that? And so there have been some discussions about penalizing companies that are utilizing X percentage of AI components to structure their business or do their business. So this is going to come down to the states. This is going to come down to the disclosure rules on this, and not disclosing to the client per se loan disclosures, but disclosing that how much AI is being utilized. And then once that's done, we're going to see what the state labor laws actually incite and what they decide to do. So this is going to come down to state, and it's going to have some components from federal. Time will tell, and it's still so new. I think everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to do with it and how they're going to navigate it. But I do believe there's going to be a day that you're going to be paying taxes, some form of employment taxes on your bot.
Yeah, but at some point something has to happen because again, the revolution that's coming our way is going to be swift and en masse.
And
So
then,
we'll
Donna,
see.
the other thing I've seen, I want to jump in on this real quick. The other thing
Please.
I've seen that's actually doing really well right now is people just saying, hey, I'm going to own my space. I'm going to own who I am. I don't want to be in that space. And so I want my model to be boutique. I met with a brokerage just last week, and we sat and we talked for about an hour. And he was sharing with me, Jeana, these are the things that we're really good at. These are the things that we're rated best in state for. How do we navigate this? And I said, hey, look, there's some tools that you can do for your income calculations. There's tools you can do for the actual work of the mortgage loan itself. But what the ultimate best business decision for that particular group was to stay a boutique model and to market
Mm,
themselves as such. Market themselves as we're real people. We're going to pick up the phone. We're going to blah, blah, blah. We're old school. Like lean into that, really go all in, own the space that you want to be in. There is nothing saying, in fact, I have a pretty good gut, LaDonna, and one of my gut feelings, and the data will support this in time. I hope this recorded, you guys can bring this back in about 4 years. But I do believe that so much is going AI. People are having a hard time identifying what is real, and that's going to compound exponentially. And so the need for real contact, the need for somebody sitting across from you, the need from a phone call or a feed where somebody's actually looking at you and talking to you, or having their sensory expanded because they're sitting at a meal, an actual meal with you, or they're having a coffee, or that live integration is going to become more critical than ever, and people are going to become extremely hungry for it, more so than they are ever before. And so there's components of AI that can do the work, but I think the human connection is not going away anytime soon. I think it's going to become greater and grander. And if you lean into that, hey, you're going to do quite well. So I don't think there's one camp that wins with this. I'm actually quite excited. I think the opportunity and the differentiators that we have right now in the mortgage space are greater than ever before. And really, it's a time when you can see people come in, throw out what they knew in the past, and rebuild from a new space, and their business is booming. So, really, this is kind of just getting clear on what space you want to be in, owning that, leaning into it. If you're the old school, be old school. Go all in on being old school and boutique. And if you're tech savvy and you want to be forward facing and all these other things, and you want to have that big flare, go for that. But there's a space in the middle too that people are doing really, really well. And whichever lane you pick, I think whoever owns their lane and is, fully into it is going to do extremely well.
I really appreciate that point. It kind of sparked something that I saw the other day where someone had posted about how they were meeting with a person to do a demo. And the person that they met with looked real, talked real, moved real. They even at one point asked where their degrees were from. And so he grabbed them off of the wall and talked about where his degree was from and kind of put it back. And then he said, put three fingers in front of your face. And as of right now, that's something that AI models cannot do. It breaks it and it wouldn't do it. And it ended up ending the call. But the point of it was AI has gotten so good and it's so believable now. And the way that it interacts has come so far that this is not even the AI of a year ago. It is completely different. So the possibilities of these things happening are real. We know that they are, but taking that time to really set yourself apart now and leaning into those human components hopefully will be what sustain us. And as so many people know who have followed me and my evolution here, I am such a firm believer in live interaction. That is why I have built this business basically around it. For the first year that MaxClass was a thing, all of our classes were live because I do believe in it so much and I want for that connection to continue. But again, we have to be realists and we have to know exactly what we're working with and how we're going into it. So, this has been a very AI heavy conversation, and I'm glad that it was because it is so top of mind for people. But I hope that it really did help with starting to trigger your minds for all of the participants who are here on what we're looking for. Because again, we want to continue to do these going forward, and we want to be able to help you with those real sticky situations that you are running into. Between the two of us, we have seen a lot in this industry. So we're here, we're happy to help. But with that, I want to go ahead and wrap up. We have covered everything here that we wanted to cover. We appreciate you being here, and we'll continue to share those links so that you have the information. Everything is anonymous. You do not have to share your name or your email unless you want us to get back to you directly. But otherwise, they'll be anonymous. So submit your questions for sticky situations, and we'll let you know when the next compliance webinar is. If I remember correctly, it's in 2 weeks, but then after that, again, they kind of start scaling back. So take advantage of these free conversations while you can. They will not be like this forever. Jeana, as always, you are amazing. I appreciate you. Thank you for your expertise on everything. And we hope you enjoyed this. We will send out the recording of it. Feel free, share it with whomever you'd like. We want your details and information so that we can help you going forward.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks all.